Mohammed Zubair of Alt News has been in news this week. Now, what if you ask me if I have a complaint with Mohammed Zubair? I shall give you three answers. No, no and yes. So first is no, second is no, third is yes. So let me elaborate first on the two no's. Now, to begin with, nobody should be prosecuted or jailed for their views, especially when these are limited to social media. People living in a democracy, liberal or not, can't be so thin-skinned कि किसी ने कुछ बोल दिया, I am so hurt, they send this guy to jail. Now, in any case, recourse to a law that takes away the liberty of who they see as offenders should not be available. That explains my first no. And in fact, in any case, the state should never use that law. Because what is a secular constitution? A secular constitution is not an irreligious constitution. It doesn't mean that those who run the state don't have a religion. They can be totally devout in the practice of their own religion. It is just that the state has no religion and the state should not privilege one religion over the other. Now, if that is the case in that secular system, what right does the state have to use a law to protect one religion from the other? So that explains my first no. I not only sympathize with Mohammed Zubair in this time of crisis for him, I stand foursquare behind him for the restoration of his liberty. It's also the view in this short and sharp 50-word edit on ThePrint, which I am sharing with you. Please do take a look on my screen. Now, further, the laws under which people are being prosecuted by those offended, sections 153 and 295A of the Indian Penal Code, are obscenities. While section 295 was included in the IPC of 1860, the original one, just after the company had given way to the British Raj, subsection 295A was added by the British in 1927, responding to a specific crisis. All laws made in crisis or responding to events are dangerous and are bound to be misused. And I can give you many examples. I can give you UAPA. I can give you the strengthening of UAPA after 2611. I can tell you the NIA Act, which has taken away many powers from the states. I can also tell you about 498, sections of 498, which is for dowry killings, dowry violence, or dowry deaths. There is also the new rape law, which came in which was pretty much formulated on the streets after the so-called Nirbhaya case. All these laws are made in a hurry, in crisis or responding to events. Laws made on the street, on the run, responding to events will always be dangerous in the future. Now, this happened in a decade of public disorder in the early 20th century. This ended with the killing of a Hindu. His name was Mahashaya Rajpal, by the way, the original founder of Rajpal Publications, a well-known Hindi publishing house. The murder took place in 1929. Now, Mahashaya Rajpal had published in 1924 a book by a pseudonymous author, an author whose name we didn't know. Muslims considered the book blasphemous to the Holy Prophet. There were calls given to assassinate him, assassinate the publisher, the author, whoever. There was a lot of anger. Even Mahatma Gandhi criticized the book. Top Muslim lawyers, including Muhammad Ali Jinnah, appeared in defense of the assassin, the man who assassinated Rajpal. Poet Iqbal of the Sare Jahan Se Acha fame attended his funeral. He was also hailed as a Ghazi and is still a national hero of sorts in Pakistan. In fact, I am sharing with you the link of a story we just ran earlier this week saying precisely this. Now, it was in the preceding decade that the British had to deal with rising Hindu-Muslim troubles. Until then, they hadn't faced so much of it. There was the bloody Mopla rebellion in Malabar, as Kerala was known as then. That is when the Muslims stood in revolt against the British, but those attacks, that violence also took the Hindus of Malabar in their sweep. So Hindus also suffered greatly, particularly because they happened to be relatively well off. This followed a series of riots across the country. They kept on breaking out spasmodically, something here, something there, something here, something there. In the Punjab, as United Punjab or Undivided Punjab was called then, so with a D, in the Punjab, this manifested in angry argument wars between the Muslims and Hindus, especially the Arya Samajist Hindus. From the Muslim side, a book was published which the Hindus saw as offensive to the revered Sita of Ramayana. They got even soon enough, the Hindus thought they got even soon enough with the book on the Prophet. There were multiple but failed assassination attempts on some suspected to be author of the book and the publisher. Until they all failed, until Ilm-ud-din, barely 20, then succeeded in assassinating Rajpal in 1929. Now, Ilm-ud-din also is a very interesting story. And please read the article that my colleague Praveen Swami has done about him, because the police records also tell you a more complex story. So please read that story. I'm sharing a link with you. It was during this troubled decade, a decade of the 20s, that the British attempted a legal cum bureaucratic solution by passing the equivalent of India's blasphemy law. That's how subsection 290A was added in 1927. The hope was that once people had a legal recourse for their anger on blasphemy, then they'll go to the police station or to court and not take recourse to violence. Violence will be prevented. But it did not save Rajpal's life 2 years later. And almost 100 years later now, it didn't save Kanhaiya Lal or Umesh Kole's lives either. It was a bad law enacted by a cynical colonial power with no permanent stakes in India. Not only has this bad law survived on the books, it's been sanctified by a large bench of the Supreme Court in 1957. It was taken to its awful logical end, and I call logical deliberately. It isn't a typo. It's not the illogical end. It's an awful logical end. It was taken to its awful logical end by Zia-ul-Haq in Pakistan. He added further subsections prescribing life sentence or death for offense to the Quran or the Prophet, respectively. If in India nobody has dared to dump this bad law in 75 years of independence, who will ever touch it in Pakistan? If anything, they might make it worse. In India, it has lately found a new oomph, in fact, with tit-for-tat FIRs, and that's unfortunate. Now, if the law is an obscenity, so is the arrest of Zubair or anybody under this law, or the demands to arrest Nupur Sharma. Now, if the first no to whether I have a complaint with Zubair is principled, the second comes from my heart as a believer and as a Hindu. I understand that all social media posts by Zubair have popped up now and triggered a vast number of Hindus who see these as offensive. Now that's new. Hindus taking this kind of offense is new. For generations, we Hindus have grown to have a questioning, often critical view of our gods. Probably that's why we have so many of them. You need one God to make up for the imperfections of the other. None has given us the final word we can't argue with. No God, nobody who brought us any message from God has given us the final word we can't argue with. We can argue with everything. We can disagree with anything. At least not until lately. Let's keep our fingers crossed. Now, all our gods, particularly in their humanized manifestations, have frailties. Through history, Hindu religiosity has been worn mostly lightly with some sense of humor. Even our gods have much sense of humor, and thank God for that. One of the storied exchanges in the history of the Indian Express, now recorded by Arun Shourie in his memoir, is between late Jansatta editor Prabhas Joshi and the founder of the Express, Ramnath Goenka. Joshi asked Goenka why he wasn't renewing the contract of then Express editor B.G. Varghese, although he was such a sant admi, such a saintly soul. And Goenka said, that's the problem. He's Saint George Varghese and my Express is Shivji ki Barat. You want to know what Lord Shiva's marriage party looks like, what Shivji's Barat looks like? Check out this song, of which I'll share a link with you from YouTube. Check out this song from the 1955 Devanand starrer Munimji. For nearly 7 decades now, nobody has taken offense to this. Nobody was charged under 295 AIPC or under NDPS Act, because see the mention of some substances in that song. Now, we might also remember how late Sushma Swaraj was angered by the Radha on the Dance Floor song from Student of the Year, and she asked, why does it always have to be the name of a Hindu deity? But there were no consequences. In fact, since then, millions of Hindus must have danced to the same song at weddings, anniversaries, birthday, office, college parties, wherever. In her film Fire, Deepa Mehta featured lesbian love between two lower middle class Hindu sisters-in-law trapped in loveless marriages. There were murmurs if she really had to name them Radha and Sita, but no real consequences. Blasphemy was almost non-existent for the vast Hindu majority in our country. Now, if the same Hindus are taking offense, and that too so angrily as to cheer Zubair's arrest and demanding more such, it shows an Abrahamization of Hinduism which isn't good. Because blasphemy, all said and done, was an Abrahamic concept. It's also something that by now I would say mostly Christians, it's also a concept that I'd say by now Christianity and Judaism has mostly grown out of. Now, this is the reason for my second no to the question, do I have any complaints with Mohammed Zubair? No, I don't have any complaints with him. The second reason, why? Because given how we Hindus have been, I'd still see Zubair as a victim. He obviously did not figure that the mood in the country among the Hindus had changed. Which brings us to my third answer, which is yes. So what is it that I have a complaint with Zubair about? Now, having stood by his side on principle as well as on my religious beliefs, here is my complaint with Mohammed Zubair. Now, while it is correct that he and Alt News have caused much discomfiture to the Modi government with their fact-checking version of journalism, the real reason behind his current troubles is the Nupur Sharma episode. Now, let's try and reconstruct in a couple of sentences what happened there. Now, in an argument on Times Now, she made some references to the Prophet's personal life that offended the Muslims. This may have blown over with an apology or stayed within India. But Zubair took out that short clip and gave it wide airing, and that led to a kerfuffle in the Islamic world and embarrassed Modi government greatly. His unfortunate arrest now, and I'm again calling his arrest unfortunate. His unfortunate arrest now is a regrettable, and I'm also adding regrettable just so that I know these days a few words can be taken out of context and can be misrepresented. So I'll repeat this sentence. His unfortunate arrest now is a regrettable payback for that, but payback it is for that. Nupur Sharma's Hindu supporters' defense that she was only stating what's written in the Islamic records doesn't wash. As much as the one for Leena Mani Mekalai saying what's the issue if she has Kali puffing a cigarette, because in that manifestation the goddess doesn't exactly conform to conservative social injunctions. In both cases, it is the context that matters. See, on the other hand, the larger proposition of Zubair and his institution, that is Alt News, left or not, it is liberal and secular. That is their proposition. If that be so, do you still believe in blasphemy? That's a question. What kind of liberalism justifies promoting outrage over blasphemy? It would be okay if you were speaking merely as a devout Muslim. I will accept that. My complaint is that you get your fame and respect from your secular liberal credentials. Or please say that that isn't so, in which case I'll say sorry and withdraw whatever I'm saying. If you still, like another member of the Muslim clergy, are offended when somebody says something you see as derogatory or offensive about figures you so revere, that is acceptable too. But then apply the same principle and avoid taking liberties with other people's gods and gurus too. I have zero argument with the left as long as they are true to their ideology and do not believe in any god or religion. Atheism is fine. I have a serious issue, however, with the so-called left liberalism, which holds a selective view of the right to deliver or endure offense. I am complaining as an Indian here, na Hindu, na Musalman.